Hello, welcome to part 2 of Freddie Miller's career. We finished off on 1935, but I'll continue from 1936, and I think I've wrote more for 1936 than I have any other year. The thing I wrote for both videos was about 7,500 words long, and over 1,000 of those words are just talking about 1936 alone. So we better get into it. Miller's record for each year gets worse from here on out. Miller's record in 1936 was 12 wins, 4 losses, with 4 knockouts, making his overall record 186 wins, 18 losses, 5 draws, and 40 knockouts. Miller didn't start this year off well, and on New Year's Day he fought Rodolfo Casanova, who was a top 3 rated contender in his career. The fight was in Mexico City, and it was scheduled for 10 rounds. It was reported that, this is a quote, Casanova decisively defeated Miller, and Casanova won 7 rounds of the fight, and he knocked Miller down in the 8th round for good measure. Miller followed that up with another loss to a top 10 rated contender. This time it was up against Johnny Pena. Miller started off strongly, but he seemed to tire after the 5th round, and from the 6th round onward, Pena was winning, and he frequently landed rights to Miller's jaw. So Pena won on points after 10 rounds. After that rough start to the year, Miller fought Cecil Payne for the 6th time, and this is the last time they'll have fought. Miller won 6 of the 10 rounds in the fight, and he won a neutral decision. After a 1st round knockout over an unrated opponent named Bobby Gray in a keep busy fight, Miller put his NBA title on the line in the 12 round rematch against Johnny Pena. According to the Seattle Times, Miller didn't give Pena an opening for the first 9 rounds, and he built up a massive early lead. In the 10th round, Miller opened up, and in the 11th, he knocked Pena down for a count of 9, and he had him staggered again in the 12th round for a decisive victory on points. Pena was bleeding from a cut in his face for most of the fight, and the referee, Tommy McCarthy, talked to the ringside boxing commissioners about stopping the fight twice, and he was ordered to proceed. It wasn't a very exciting fight. Both Miller and Pena were booed, and some of the spectators even left. That is Miller's 11th total title defense. On March 2nd, just 15 days after the rematch with Pena, Miller fought Hall of Famer and future world champion P.T. Saron for, I think it was their 3rd fight. This is a 15-rounder with Miller's title on the line, and this was reported to have been, quote, a fast, furious fight complete with rough tactics. Some fans booed the decision, and some cheered, as people do with fights that are very close. Both fighters weighed in at 125 pounds. This is a very long quote from the Evening Star. In the first few rounds, Saron carried the fight to Miller, throwing punches from every angle and attacking in violent flurries. He repeatedly penetrated the champion's defense with smashing blows to the body and chin. Miller rallied with 7, however, and jabbing nicely with his right and slipping over long damaging lefts. he had apparently even matters by the 10th. That round, however, saw the first of many low blows. Miller, his face registering pain and surprise, slumped until the referee called a temporarily halted the fight without taking the round away from the challenger. Sorry for my stuttering there. The 11th round went to Miller on another low blow, fired just after Miller had crashed his left squarely to Sand's chin, and it looked like serious trouble might result when the challenger threw another low blow, which hurt the champion bad by interrupting the 12th. This resulted in a break so Miller could recover from the low blow, and during the break Miller shouted, "If it happens one more time, he's out." After 4 or 5 minutes, the fight went on, and Miller, coasting through the 13th, traded blows on an even basis with Cerrone throughout the last 2 rounds. The referee was sole judge, and he scored the fight to Miller 6 rounds to 3, with 6 rounds even. So Miller won on points and successfully defended his title for the 12th consecutive time. After Miller had 2 wins in keep busy fights, one of which was a 10-round U2 decision with a top 3 rated Andy Martin, Miller had a rematch with Cerrone on May 11th. This was for Miller's title, and Miller weighed in at 126 pounds, and Cerrone weighed 125 pounds. An article from the Evening Star reported, gathering momentum as the bout progressed, Petey ripped both fists into Miller with a savageness that bellied the likeable, mild-mannered veteran. There was no doubt in the minds of the crowd or the score of photographers that leaped into the ring after the battle was ended that Petey was the new champion. The only sour note of the entire evening was the judging of Bob Eller, who balloted for a draw. The Star score sheet showed Cerrone the winner of 7 rounds and Miller 4 with 4 heats even. So Cerrone won by mutual decision after 15 rounds, and after 3 years, 4 months, 28 days, and 12 consecutive defenses, Miller finally lost his title. 12 defenses in just 3 years. 2 weeks later, Miller fought against unrated Jimmy Vaughan. Vaughan had Miller down in the 2nd round from a left uppercut, and Miller came back in the middle rounds and began to score with his jab. Vaughan regained control, however, in the later rounds, so Vaughan won a split decision after 10 rounds. I think it's clear at this point that Miller is out of his prime. Miller came back with 6 consecutive wins to close out the year, 4 of them by knockout. Strangely, after losing to an unrated opponent, Miller fought top 3 rated contender Everett Reitmeyer, who had a record of 93 wins, 5 losses, 9 draws, with 9 KOs. Miller won by UD after 10 rounds, and Miller then won a 10-round decision over unrated Jimmy Buckler, and strangely the next 4 of his 6 wins were in South Africa. Miller fought and knocked out top 10 rated contender Willie Smith in 10 rounds before going in with someone that beat him way back in February 1935, top 3 rated Maurice Holzer. Miller won on points after 12 rounds. He then fought Willie Smith again and knocked him out in the 6th round again. To close out the year and this trip to South Africa, Miller beat unrated Phil Spick by TKO in the 4th round. So at the end of the year, Miller has a record of 57 wins, 11 losses, 2 draws against top 10 rated opponents, 19 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws against top 3 rated opponents, 10-5-1 against champions, and 6 wins, 3 losses against Hall of Famers. Let me clear my throat. 1937. Miller's record that year was 10 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, 1 no contest, 1 KO. His overall record is 196 wins, 22 losses, and 6 draws. Miller started off the year with a 10-round split decision win over top 10 rated Frankie Covelli. According to the Cincinnati Enquirer, Covelli had Miller hurt in round 7 with a right to the head. Miller dictated the action as Covelli was only able to land after Miller had thrown his left hand. After that, Miller had a rematch with Jimmy Vaughan. The unrated fighter Miller had lost to before he lost his title to Cerrone. After he lost his title to Cerrone, sorry. This time around, Miller dominated Vaughan and was reported to have had the right side of Vaughan's face battered by the 2nd round. Miller met Vaughan's rushes with left uppercuts all throughout the match, so Miller won a decision after 10 rounds to avenge his earlier defeat. After that, Miller had 2 fights against unrated opponents, winning both, one by knockout, one by decision. Miller then went on a bad run. In his next 3 fights, he lost to top 3 rated and future champion Jackie Wilson by mutual decision after 10 rounds. I wasn't able to find any reports giving great detail on the fight. Miller then went in with Norman Quales, an unrated opponent who had beaten Miller in November 1935. In that fight, Quales started off slowly and by round 4 began to counterpunch Miller. Miller tried to exchange with Quales and Quales began to work Miller's body. Quales was in control of the fight the rest of the way and he hurt Miller with a right hand in the 8th, but Miller survived. Quales won a 10-round split decision. After that, Miller fought top 10 rated Lou Feldman and got a draw after 8 rounds. Miller then had a keep busy fight that he won by decision after 10 rounds, and he decided to go back in with Jackie Wilson. It is quoted from the Cincinnati Enquirer. Miller got off to a fast start and scored repeatedly in the first 2 rounds. Wilson began to find Miller in the 4th round, however. Miller cut Wilson on the side of his right eye in the 5th round. Wilson continued to force the fight, with Miller landing a low blow on Miller that led to a temporary stoppage for Miller to recover. Miller appeared slowed by the low blow the rest of the way. The local fans booed the decision against Miller. Miller then had another keep busy fight that he won by decision after 8 rounds. He then fought future welterweight champion and top 3 rated fighter Freddie Cochran. It should be mentioned Freddie Cochran had a lot of early career defeats and was a journeyman at the start of his career. Cochran was 25 wins, 18 losses, 4 draws entering this fight, and he'd lost his last 7 fights in a row. Needless to say, Miller won on points after 8 rounds. After this, Miller took another trip to South Africa. He had an 8-round no decision fight with a 3-0 fighter named Alec Hanahan. No decision was given and no newspapers had given a verdict on the fight. Well, newspapers that were found anyway. The fight That fight was in Mozambique, strangely. The next four fights, and also the last four fights of the year Miller had, were in South Africa. After the rough start to the year, and Miller hasn't been doing too well this year, Miller decided to go back in with his rival, well, I'd say his rival right now, P.T. Cerrone. I wasn't able to find any reports on this fight. Cerrone was still NBA featherweight champion at this point. This was a non-title fight, and Miller, even though he hasn't been doing too well this year, won the fight on points after 10 rounds. That's Miller's 7th total win over a Hall of Famer. Since Miller had beaten Cerrone in a non-title fight, he got a shot at Cerrone's title on September 4th. This is quoted from the Sunday Star. Cerrone nearly ended the bout in the 6th round when he ripped a right to Miller's stomach. The challenger, let's see it, I think that's supposed to be staggered towards Cerrone, who smashed a left cross to the head and floored him for a count of 7. Miller recovered quickly and lashed out at Cerrone to start a whirlwind session of slugging, which ended only when the referee pried them apart after Miller had failed to hear the bell ending the round. In the 12th, Cerrone swung a hard right and sent Miller to the canvas for a count of 3. But Freddie bounced up and was trying wildly for a knockout when the fight ended. Although it was a slashing fight all the way, neither suffered any visible damage until the 11th. Then Miller landed a blow that drew blood from Cerrone's nose, and P.T. retaliated by opening an ugly cut above Miller's eye. That was Miller's last fight with Cerrone, and his last title fight. Miller won his last 2 fights that year. The first was a 10-round points win against an unrated opponent, and the second was a 12-round points win over top 10 rated Aldo Spaldi. Miller is now 62 wins, 14 losses, 4 draws against top 10 rated opponents, 21 wins, 10 losses, 2 draws against top 3 rated opponents, 12 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw against champions, and 7 wins, 4 losses against Hall of Famers. And his title fight record is now 13 wins and 3 losses. And now moving on to 1938. Miller's record that year was 12 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 3 KO, making his overall record 208 wins, 24 losses, and 7 draw, with 44 knockouts. After Miller's trip to South Africa, he decided to have another long trip to Europe that would last the majority of the year. 13 of Miller's 15 fights this year were in Europe, and 2 were in the US. Most of those I wrote 5 out of 15 here. And most of those 15 fights were against unrated opponents. 5 out of 15 were against rated opponents, in fact. And Miller had 16 fights against unrated opponents before he had 1 fight against a rated opponent that year. 5 out of the 6 were in the UK, and 1 was in France. He won 5 out of 6 of them, and drew 1. The draw was against a boxer named Paul, I don't know if I'll say his last name right, Dogneux. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's spelled Dogniaux. It should be mentioned that that fight took place in Paris, which was Dogneux' hometown. The only familiar name of the unrated opponents to me was Len Wickbar. For anyone watching this that doesn't know who Len Wickbar is, he holds 3 boxing world records, which will probably never be beaten. He has the most wins of any boxer at 342, the most fights at 472, and fought the most total rounds of any boxer at 4,023. I couldn't find any reports of that fight, but Miller did win on points after 12 rounds. The first top 10 rated opponent Miller fought that year was Johnny Cusick, which Miller won by knockout in the 7th round. After another 3 keep busy fights, which Miller won all 3 of on points after 12 rounds, he fought top 10 rated Ronnie James. Again, I couldn't find reports of this fight, but I do know Miller won by disqualification in round 8. Miller had 1 keep busy fight after that, which he won on points after 10 rounds before he fought top 10 rated Johnny King, which he also won on points after 10 rounds. And Miller returned to the US after winning 1 more keep busy fight. His first fight back was against top 3 rated contender Leo Rodak. It was a 15 rounder. Miller won the first 6 rounds, but after that Rodak adjusted and started taking rounds and had even the fight near the end. In the last 2 rounds, Rodak landed at will on Miller and had him staggered, so Rodak won the fight on points after 15 rounds. Miller's final fight that year was against Sammy Angot. This is Miller's last fight against Hall of Famer. And for anyone that doesn't know who Sammy Angot is, he was the lightweight champion of the world between December 1941 and November 1942. He retired. Sammy Angot did retire. That's why he lost his title so fast. Apparently, due to he said it was because of a broken hand. Angot, by the end of his career, had 11 wins over Hall of Famers, including a stoppage win over Ike Williams. And Sammy Angot was the first person to ever beat Willie Pep when Pep was 62-0. I couldn't find any newspapers covering this fight. Angot won a unanimous decision after 10 rounds. So by the end of the year, Miller is 64 wins, 16 losses, 3 draws against top 10 rated opponents. 21 wins, 12 losses, 2 draw against top 3 rated opponents. 12 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw against champions. And 7 wins, 5 losses against Hall of Famers. Of course, he remains 13-3 in world title fights. And moving on to 1939, this was the worst year of Miller's entire career. Miller's record that year was 3 wins and 5 defeats with 1 KO, which made his overall record 211 wins, 29 losses, 7 draw with 45 KOs. And Miller's first fight that year was against future top 10 rated Jackie Kalura, and Miller lost by UD after 10 rounds. He then lost to unrated Emile Joseph, who was 27 wins, 1 loss, 2 draw at the time. So, no, not a bomb or anything, just decent fighter. And Miller then beat unrated Wishy Jones by decision after 10 rounds. Then Miller's next 4 fights that year were in Venezuela. His first fight there was against top 10 rated Simon Chavez, which he lost on points after 10 rounds. His next 2 fights were against unrated opponents. He won them both, 1 by decision, 1 by KO. Miller then had a rematch with Chavez and lost again on points after 10 rounds. That was Miller's last fight against a rated opponent. Miller then traveled back to the US, and his last fight that year was against unrated Georgie Hansford. Miller lost on points after 10 rounds. So Miller is now 64 wins, 17 losses, 3 draws against top 10 rated opponents, 21 wins, 12 losses, 3 draws against top 3 rated opponents, 12 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw against champions, and 7 wins, 5 losses against Hall of Famers. I think that's meant to be 64 wins, 18 losses, 3 draws against top 10 rated opponents. Sorry. His record in title fights remains 13 and 13. And those are the final numbers for those records, because Miller didn't fight any rated opponents afterwards, so that's the same. And now moving on to the final year of Freddie Miller's career, 1940. He only had 1 fight that year. His final fight against an unrated opponent named Percival Jr. This fight took place in Miller's hometown in Cincinnati. Joyner was only 10 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, with 6 KOs. Miller was TKO'd at 2 minutes and 43 seconds into round 8. According to reports, Miller was battered, his left eye was cut and swollen, and his left ear was bleeding during the fight. If you remember from part 1, I said Freddie Miller was stopped in his first fight, and that was one of only 2 times he was stopped. This is the second, obviously. He was only stopped in his first and second fights. Miller retired after the fight with a final career record, this is including newspaper decisions, of 211 wins, 30 losses, 7 draws, with 45 knockouts, and he was only 29 years old at the time. After boxing, Miller worked for a field engineering crew at Hamilton County Courthouse near Cincinnati, and Miller passed away on May 8, 1962, in Cincinnati's Good Samaritan Hospital. He had been observed for several weeks there for heart problems. He was only 51 years old at the time. Miller was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1997. Since then, he's been forgotten, and he's barely ever mentioned when talking about the greatest southpaws of all time, unjustifiably, when he is arguably the best southpaw above even Pacquiao. See ya.